Hello and welcome back to Processing the Process, where we capture and discuss the technical, psychological, and contextual dynamics that shape the process of creating a work of art. Week by week, moment by moment, we are following Jonathan Riddell, choreographer and artistic director of Riddell Dance Theater, as he creates his latest works for RDT's Second Story Dance project and delves into new creative territory. Speaking of which, today we will focus once again on Jonathan's musical initiatives, as well as our October 10th Second Story rehearsal, starting, of course, with the music. Jonathan created a series of fabulous stylized close-up photographs that beautifully and poignantly convey the emotions and psychological themes of the raw album. So we spent some time seeing if we could see which photographs would potentially match up with the songs on the album, presuming that each song would be released with a separate image. Now, it is not clear what path we'll take, because we may also decide to choose a single image that will represent the entire album and each individual song. This is truly process. We're working it out. But the images hopefully will be used in some way, shape, or form, because they are truly fabulous, very provocative and evocative, and we look forward to sharing them with you in some form and some fashion. Now, believe it or not, John wrote, unbeknownst to anyone, yet another song. This is the
I tend to do
song.
things in secret, yeah.
Oh my goodness gracious, and I just walked through the door. Oh, by the way. And this is the 8th song on the album, and it just so happens, and not surprisingly, that it fits in beautifully from a musical standpoint and a thematic standpoint with all of the other songs on the album. So since this was news to me too, Jonathan, can you tell us about this 8th song? I mean, did you think that the album needed another song for one or more sets of reasons, or did the muse have a nice visit with you?
I think ultimately the muse had a nice visit with me, but I also think I maybe called upon her, because I did think the album could stand more. I'm sort of so thrilled with it as it is, and then I thought, well, why not have more? No, but truly, I thought we could really have another song that was sort of in the brand that I'm ultimately going for. I did a lot with the other tracks to really try and push the variety of sound and style that I could. And then I was like, I want to have at least one more song that brings us back to this sort of real danceable music, the real electronic and pseudo, quasi-electronic, quasi-industrial type sound. That truly is what I love, and what I believe most of the album is. So I wanted to do that, and I thought also, even though I was toying around with one or two of the songs already as finale songs, I kind of thought, well, but what if I really wrote a big kind of finale song? And I don't know what that means, and I don't even know if I had that in me, but I was like, well, let's at least go for a party dancey track. A party dancey track, but that would conclude an album that goes into very dark places. So what does that look like? And I thought to myself, I don't know what I thought to myself. So many things, so many different images came to mind. One, again, is the sort of romance of the dance floor, which is something I love to explore. I love songs that are romantic in some way. I certainly love songs that can be darkly romantic, and this song definitely is. Yes. But also songs that can romanticize the actual dance floor and what it is to meet on a dance floor. And even though the lyrics don't specifically say that, I feel like they kind of evoke that. So this song is about a meeting of two lovers. But then, oh man, I laugh about it because sort of in typical John fashion, I drew upon my love of horror movies. And I had already written one song called So Runs the Beast, and the beast is sort of he's kind of a devil. He's also kind of a dragon, but he's kind of a bear. He's kind of something very natural and common too, and werewolfish, I think, a little bit. So then I thought, well, what if that creature had a bride? Very Bride of Frankenstein, but this is Bride of the Beast. And so the subtitle of the song, the sort of the parenthetical title of the song is Bride of the Beast, which, again, I'm chuckling because I pulled it off. I don't, like, it sounds, to me, saying it sounds so absurd, but then the track is, I adore it. I love it. So I drew some images from Bride of Frankenstein, as well as my own song, So Runs the Beast, and I kind of married those themes together, and in a very dancey way.
All while, at least in my view, contributing to the overall narrative and emotional arc of the album.
Yes.
How you manage to do all of that? I don't know.
I'm yes. There are even more layers that I put into this. I also wanted it to be the album. The first track on the album is such a declaration of defiance, and it's the sort of main character, if you will, the singer. He's coming into a city, or he lives in a city where he feels disenfranchised and wants to rebel against the establishment. And he presumably has at least one person alongside of him, if not an entourage of people. And we're going to take over and be free and try and free this world of labels and restraints, and we want everybody to be themselves, and we definitely want everyone to fly their freak flag. And so I wanted to create a song that would be the other bookend of that statement. And so within the album, that character then goes on this journey of sort of exploring, why am I so angry at the world? I'm angry at within my personal relationships. I'm angry at myself. I'm so angry that I kind of want to do damage to myself. But ultimately, he is able to experience a metaphoric, at least, death of sorts, or a bottom, where he then realizes he needs to change and go even deeper. And that's sort of where the beast comes out, where the idea of the beast came out, is, well, what if I just embrace my true primal self and who I really am, and stop worrying about social constraints, to put it very simply. Where do you go from there in this world of, like, how does the beat go on, kind of a thing, and how do you find new relationships that will support that? And when I really thought about the Bride of Frankenstein, because that very much came to mind, I thought, well, isn't that kind of a glorious metaphor for a person who already feels very isolated but is longing for companionship. But if they're going to have any companion, why not a companion that truly understands them, that truly gets them? Sorry, we had a little technical blip there. But what I was saying is that why not have a companion that truly understands you? So within the sort of idea of Bride of Frankenstein, there's two notions I was playing with. One is the idea of, well, one could create such a person, such a companion, or two, fate might bring two such people together. Right. And, you know, generally we can't create our companions. So while I kind of touch upon that idea a little bit, I do it in a very different way, and I focus more on the kind of star-crossed lovers type thing, where it's truly two twin souls coming together. And then with that idea, I then kind of had fun with, as I was, sorry to get a little sensational here, but as the two lovers find each other and start to maybe explore their relationship or consummate the relationship, I then had fun with the idea of like, well, seeing as they're perhaps Frankenstein creatures, that they could even start to unstitch themselves and exchange parts of themselves with each other and truly become something new, and be in a relationship where they are sharing themselves with each other, and they are no longer who they were at the beginning, but they are actually new versions of themselves that have each other within them, which, if you literally think about it, is grotesque and strange, but if you metaphorically think about it, that's so much of what relationships are. Completely. and certainly marriages are, and I just thought, wow, that's really cool. So I delved into that metaphor some, and ended the song with them be sort of freely giving into this notion of entwining themselves with each other, and then journeying off into some version of the sunset together, which, you know, for them it's the moon, you know, it's going off into the night, and ultimately into the sky. Wow, okay, great. That's a way to end an album, right?
Well, it's so interesting, John, because while you use the term sensational, but while you may have used these fantastical images to create a most creative song, the truth is that metaphorically, what you've really just explained to us, to me, is universal. The longing to find another who can truly see us for who we are, and accept, embrace, engage with that, and ultimately, as you said, you know, unstitch and share with one another. But really, in any relationship, you're all aspects of who you are, and, you know, two subjective realities in essence, and creating this intersubjective reality, to get into psych terms. But, you know, bottom line being that it is a universal experience, and leave it to an artist to help us think about it in a new and innovative way. So, and where it makes sense in the overall album as well. So kudos to you, John, for that. And we certainly look forward to hearing that as part of the whole album. And speaking of songs in the album, just wanted to mention that Jonathan played 3 of the songs from the album for the first time for Lorena and Mandy at rehearsal.
That was fun. And
They
nerve-wracking.
loved it.
They loved it. Yay!
Yay! And John, I can attest, was on cloud 9
I really
to
was.
get that
It made my day.
reaction. Made your day. So we're all actually very, very excited about the hopefully soon-to-be launch of these wonderful songs.
It's coming.
But for the moment, we still have a lot going on with Second Story. Thinking about our October 10th rehearsal, as usual, Jonathan texted the group the night before with a proposed agenda. And this time, though, in the agenda, it included chit-chat time. Now,
That's right.
I saw that and fell off my chair laughing. Now, of course, as you can imagine, every rehearsal pretty much starts off that way, but to see John codify it in that way was priceless. And of course,
From 10 to 10:15 chit chat time. No.
well, interesting you say
It kind
that
of was like that, though, right?
because it, of course, we did begin with chit chat time, but John was like, moving things along. Okay, now let's go right into warm up. And he was really moving the warm up along and really flowing till everyone was totally sweaty and exhausted afterwards. Not too long to rest, however. Little brief rest, and John's like, okay, on to Brittle Branches. And there's some discussion as to whether the dancers would do a run through or review certain sections of Brittle Branches, and Jonathan's like, okay, let's make a decision. Let's go. Decisions made to run through, which Mandy and Lorena did while Jonathan took notes, which he then reviewed with the dancers after that first run. Then they go into it a second time, attempting to incorporate at least some of the notes that Jonathan had shared. Now, this time around, though, it was really significantly different from the first time, because despite moments of fatigue and forgetfulness, the dancers were clearly more invested in their performances. They were much more emotionally present, and they were committed to attacking their movements with conviction. And then afterwards, John discussed the new set of notes with the dancers, and listening to those notes, what really came through to me was that Jonathan was encouraging the dancers to take a clearly discernible, purposeful, tactile approach throughout the entire piece. And secondly, he really urged them to convey the centrality of their relationship between their two characters and have that relationship always be the impetus for their movements and their qualitative choices. And John, you and the dancers were delving much more deeply into how to use the eyes and hands to achieve these two things, to communicate the nature of the relationship and to literally evoke a very palpable, tactile type of sensation.
Right.
And I think that this work that you all did together made a very big difference on a number of levels. The more Mandy and Lorena fleshed out their characters, the more their bond deepened and the more nuanced it became. And as that happened, they were experiencing the piece on a deeper and richer level that was quite satisfying. And then the richer the piece became, the more excited Mandy and Lorena became. And you see how now we're coming full circle, that excitement fuels their desire to delve even deeper into the piece, and so it goes. So, John, can you describe how you worked with Lorena and Mandy to achieve this outcome?
I feel like I have embraced this notion that we used to be in much more of a workshop-y type mode where yes, everything we were doing was with integrity, but it also was informal and a little experimental, and a little bit, well, let's see what happens, now we're getting into a place where we're really gearing up for a performance. It's very exciting, and I say it all the time, but I can't say it enough that, I'm working with two mature artists, and I am so thrilled by that. These are artists who know what it is to gear up for a show. They know that the work is only going to get more and more in depth, and that lights a fire in them. They are, I can see it so clearly that they are curious and passionate about the work now more than ever, which again is thrilling to me. It doesn't necessarily go that way. Right. It could be that I start to come in with all these very specific notes, and they just start to go cross-eyed, but it's not that at all. Again, they get it. They know that, oh no, even the subtlest of notes, the tiniest little fingertip or the way you glance with your eyes makes a big difference on the stage, and it makes a big difference to your experience on the stage. And so it's thrilling to be able to talk about those things and have them just immediately grasp it, right. and be able to talk about it even. Not even just, yeah, John, I know what you're talking about, cool, but oh, that's interesting you say that, and maybe it has implications later on in the piece or earlier in the piece. So, and gosh, those are such great conversations to have. You could spend hours just talking about that stuff. So, yay, I'm so happy. And then to touch maybe specifically on some examples, I think we talked about this last video cast, but really the use of the eyes to me is important, and it's something that I've investigated a lot in my career, so I feel like I can talk almost technically about it as well as metaphorically. So to me, there's a big difference between positioning your head to look at something, but having the focus not truly lock in on something. So right now I'm looking off into a distance, but I'm letting my focus be vague, as opposed to I'm really looking at, that screw on that wall over there. That subtle change from the stage reads, but it also feels very different to the performer. And I think when you are being that specific with your eyes, suddenly you feel more grounded as a performer in what's going on. You can let the distractions of the stage fall away. Your imagination gets much more engaged. And you're able to then stay in the storyline of the piece, if it has a storyline, or at least this sort of emotional arc. And for the audience, I think it's 1,000 times much more richer, because you, in my opinion, as an audience person, you really feel like you're watching a human animal in their environment, as opposed to an archetype or a moving mannequin, which can be stunning and gorgeous. But for this type of piece, I think we really want to see emotional animals, emotional beings existing and feeling and doing things. Right. So we're talking about the eyes more, and we're talking about intention more. The character's intention, and then the hands. Really, I think when we use our hands in real life, we are absolutely tactile. Picking up a piece of paper is a very different use of the hand than picking up a piece of cardboard. Is totally different than picking up a glass, and we're used to seeing and understanding those differences, but on stage we're not always used to talking about them. And when we really can talk about them and capitalize on that, I think it makes the experience for the performer and the audience so much richer. So we're talking a lot about that. And as you can imagine, it really changes the movement. I mean, just to put your hand out in space as opposed to really actually touching something, totally different. And I've asked the dancers to now not only metaphorically touch each other, which is to say to do so through a shape of the hand and putting the hand in close proximity to the other, but actually touch them. Like, what does it feel like? Actually feel them. And again, all of that, maybe it sounds small, but I think it's huge.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And come to the show at the Emmeline on November 10th.
You'll see what tactility and focus can do.
Absolutely. We'd love to hear your feedback, in fact. And then at this point, everyone was very eager to look at the first samples of costumes that came in.
Yes.
And really, John, I think watching you all with the costumes was like process in motion. It was total experimentation. And as John put it, and I quote, sculpting, molding, and refining. Can you tell us a little bit about this process as it played out? Because I know you've been down this road many times before shows, but it's interesting for those of us for whom it's not that familiar to see how this works.
Sure. I'll try and give you a little sliver of a window opening into this, but it's interesting because I forget, particularly with costumes, sometimes that I need to just kind of let the process unfold. I of course want to visualize it and then just grasp that out of the air and put it on the dancers and be done.
Like done.
That's not how it ever works. Right. So maybe if I were a professional costume designer, I could imagine it. I could then create it beautifully, technically to perfection, and then just like fit it on the dancer and be done. But that's not the case for me. And luckily, I've worked with a number of costume designers who, and I've watched them do their version of sculpting and finessing of things. So I try and emulate that. At any rate, what I'm getting at is I did have a bunch of ideas for a particular look, and tried to go after that, and I purchased a few things from a local store. I purchased a few things online, which is scary because I'm like, it's a picture. What could it really be? But you just try and be somewhat intelligent about those choices. Again, some of it's just experience that you have to rely on. But I know the first round of costumes, I brought in a couple options, and I was kind of excited about them. The dancers seemed okay to work with them, but it was abundantly clear through the words they said directly to me, and also just the looks on their faces, that we weren't there yet. And again, these are seasoned pros, so I'm very grateful they stopped to say, look, whatever you decide, we will wear, but I know what it is like to have to wear something that you do not feel comfortable wearing on stage, and how horrible that could be.
Yeah.
And I also so greatly respect the input of the dancers, especially dancers who are creative artists themselves, that I was like, I need to listen to them. I also believe that I just don't want this to be an experience. I don't ever want my dancers to feel like, oh, I have to show up to the theater and maybe I'm doing a dance I love, but I have to wear that bleepin' costume, and that's just a big dark cloud over the experience. I want my dancers to love what they're doing out on stage. So all of that said, I knew to just take the pieces we had. So I was very much going for a very nude look. So I ordered a set of nude leotards for them, a set of nude sort of biker short leotards for them. And I ordered this interesting long sleeve bodysuit that ends in a panty line, but with these snaps going up, which hadn't quite arrived yet in time for the rehearsal. So I showed the picture to the dancers, and they seemed interested, but it's very much still an unknown. But I also talked to them about our idea for the body paint, for the makeup on the hands and the feet and on the face, this white idea. And I think we, again, maybe talked about this before, but this idea of combining images of beings, human beings, but also combining them with this sort of spirit, otherworldly notion, perhaps a Dante's Inferno-y type image, and also this idea of birch trees, and the white symbolizing the spiritual element and the birch tree element. And I thought, so if they're in kind of basically a nude fitted leotard or bodysuit, we could then do the paint, and won't that be very interesting? Yes, but when the dancers, I don't know, trying it on them, it didn't sit quite right with me, didn't sit quite right with them. I think they felt very naked, but again, they ultimately didn't mind that. It was just the fact that it kind of felt like we could push it farther, like maybe it's been done before. So I am still looking. I'm open to a whole new other direction, which is so I've showed them some pictures of some things that I've ordered. These very flowy pants. We'll see what they look like. They look great in the photos online. Sure do. And these cream-colored tunic type tops, which suddenly propel the piece into a much more angelic type look. They're these gossamer flowy costumes. And then we also have these. I was thinking of, well, they're very vulnerable, so they might be protecting themselves. So I looked at cowl neck tops, like big collars, and I love that idea. It's sort of very druidic, which combines the spiritual nature with the trees, and it gives it kind of a wintry feel, that they might be in a wintry type environment, so they're covering up more. So we're going to try those. Again, that covers them up a lot more than I had initially thought. So then I also ordered some like a tank top jumpsuit. It ends in a short, but it's sort of billowy in a slate gray. And to me, those could work. Again, a third very different look, but they could work, again, with the body paint if we're thinking maybe that these are like, again, I think of kind of Dante's Inferno, the idea that they're in kind of like smocks or tunic sack type clothes, very Unitarian, very just practical, but then with the body paint on the hands and feet and the head, that it might take it into a more strange, high-arty direction. So wow, like this range of ideas. And what's nice is they're all separates, they're all tops and bottoms, so maybe in my head already I'm kind of combining them too, like maybe the shorts but with the cowl neck thing over it, or maybe the cowl neck thing with the long white pants, maybe that'll work.
Trial and
we'll
error.
see. I'm waiting for the delivery and the next rehearsal, and we're gonna play dress up basically, and we're gonna see. You know, every dancer is different too, so their bodies are different. What their coloring is different. I'm sort of aiming at a zone of what I think will look good on these two dancers, and what fits into my theme. And as I just described, we could kind of go in many directions. Oy. And I'm not a costume designer. I have a vision. I'm a choreographer, I'm a director, but boy, like, wouldn't it be nice to just hand this responsibility over to someone else, a professional? Why aren't I doing that? I don't know. I know costume designers. I should just call them up. But
well, I think it will certainly be a process, and it will emerge from that process. And I think you all will come to a place where it feels like, after all that mixing and matching and experimenting, or maybe I'm willing this to happen, but envision that it will emerge and it will feel like, okay, this is what makes sense.
The good news is that with all of these options, I feel like a solution is around the corner.
Right.
Like a solution's on the horizon.
Yes.
We're not like at ground zero. We're not like,
exactly.
It's not like we have nothing. Like, any one of these things is going to be beautiful and interesting, but we just want to make it the best. How do we make it the best it can be?
Exactly. So stay tuned to see how this one plays out as well. And so by the end of rehearsal, I mean, everybody was really on a high, I would say, and the dancers were, again, so excited. And what was striking to me was how Mandy and Lorena were saying in not so many words, wow, this felt like a real rehearsal. And
it did.
I'm
it really
laughing
was.
because by that, of course, they mean, the three of you are all pros with, in what feels like a former life at this point, with top modern dance companies before kids were even a thought. So because there were no kids in the studio, and given the intense, intricate nature of your work, I think it really was transporting everyone back into that space. And finally, their enthusiasm about delving and fleshing out Brittle Branches more and more even led to the suggestion that maybe you take Brittle Branches material and use it in all of the warm-ups moving forward. Yes. So in my mind, I'm thinking all Brittle Branches all the time. But it's a good thing because everybody's really into it, and I have no doubt that will come through beautifully on stage on November 10th. So we are so excited to share the process with you. It's only a couple of weeks away, actually, at this point.
Yeah, oh boy.
And as John was saying in the last video cast, I believe we say, 3-4 weeks, but that's really like 3-4 days of rehearsal, 1 week. So
Right.
it just flies by, but it'll be interesting as always, 3 days, 3 weeks, whatever it is, to understand the process that is involved. So thank you so much for being with us tonight as always, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.